we are live. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Freemasons Happy Hour. I've got some guests with me today, and I'd like to say, first of all, to start, I am extremely thrilled. We've gotten a number of followers, and we've gotten a number of hits, and so we're going to keep spreading the word, and we're going to do so more today with a little bit of Masonic information, looking at a little bit of history and a little bit of introduction to Freemasonry, if you will, basically on what goes on in the lodge. I've got my very good friends and neighbor, Brother Murray is here. Brother Murray, how long have you been in the Stony Point, way on to number 313 Lodge?
Oh, let me see now. Probably around since 82 or so.
Since 1982?
Yeah.
Okay, and I've also got Brother Michael with us, who has joined us before. We're happy to have you back. Welcome.
Happy to be here, Tom. Thank you.
When did you get inducted into the Masonic Lodge here in Stony Point as well?
2018.
2018. So we've got the old and the new in terms of length of time. And I'm somewhere in about almost a 10-year mark for myself here in the lodge with us. And I've pretty much enjoyed every day. You know, every time we're here, I learn a little something new, get a laugh or two, and we learn about each other. Murray, I'd like to start with you and ask you a little bit about within the lodge, we have a number of stations. And so starting with the top, which is the Worshipful Master's station behind you, and going down to the appointed stations of the places of the stewards and things like that, why don't you give us a little bit of a brief definition? I think you're probably well qualified for that, and you've kind of gone through all these stations yourself, correct?
That's right.
Okay, so yeah, what's the master's responsibility?
Okay. Well, first off, every officer that's in the line aspiring to become master of a lodge should read that book, Stations and Places, by Henry Meacham. It explains the duties, the responsibilities, and the prerogatives of each of the officers.
Okay.
Okay. So, starting with the master, and again, this is only a brief description. The master is like the CEO of an organization, except that he has a lot more power and a lot more responsibilities than, say, somebody else of a different type of organization.
Okay.
Yeah. He controls the lodge.
Basically a dictatorship. Would you say that's pretty much the case?
I'm sorry, what?
Like a dictatorship, if you will. He's the king.
It can be a dictatorship, except that the master is elected. It's an elected office, so I put that in a more of a benevolent dictatorship, if you will.
Okay.
So what you have is the master, and he sets the tone for what goes on in the lodge.
Okay.
Everybody looks to him, what the duties are, what they're going to do, and he just goes ahead and makes sure that everything is running very, very smoothly, along with the senior warden and the junior warden and the other officers of the lodge.
Okay.
You know, a big part of that is making sure that the ritual is conducted, and for the most part conducted properly, and just pursuing under the laws, under the Constitution of the Grand Lodge of the State of New York, where we got our charter from.
Which is located in New York City.
Presently, the Grand Lodge is located on 23rd Street in New York City. The trustees own the building, and that's where Grand Lodge meets.
Okay.
But there's other locations where Grand Lodge in the future could possibly meet.
Okay.
For one, it's Utica. We had a Grand Lodge session at our home up in Utica. Utica is a place where they have assisted living. They have, for those that are indigent, can come to there. When you get a little older, it's a home for Masons, should they so desire to be there.
Not to mention the medical research. It's quite a facility. I've been there.
Yes, medical research. They're doing wonderful things. If I'm not mistaken, I believe they invented the pacemaker there. They did terrific work. They're doing terrific work at our medical research
Okay.
lab.
Now, moving along down to the senior warden, which is the next step, next officer stationed down, which is actually right now occupied by Brother Michael and doing a wonderful job. So what's his responsibility?
Okay. The first thing is, his first responsibility, should the master not be in attendance, that is his responsibility to preside over the lodge.
To run the meeting,
To run the
make
meeting.
decisions,
And-
okay.
And I know in some cases, they had past masters put in there, but rightfully what should happen is, unless he decides otherwise, he would move up. Should you, as master of the lodge, not be able to attend, it's his responsibility to step up and be there.
Like, for example, if I was abducted by aliens on the way
If you
home.
will be abducted by aliens, I would hope you bring me back a gift from that foreign land,
I think 2 meetings ago, Murray and I were up there together in the East.
Yeah.
Tom, he was out on a business trip. Remember, you said your favorite memory was him becoming the master?
Oh, yes.
And he had the same memory as you? That was like 2 meetings ago.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, well.
And you weren't abducted by aliens, right?
I wasn't, but should I be abducted by aliens, you really want me to bring a memento back on anal probing from alien life forms? I can't imagine that. How about a postcard or a keychain?
Yeah.
Anyway, I digress. So the senior warden,
Yeah. So the senior warden, he has other responsibilities. He oversees the 2 masters of ceremonies. That's his responsibility. And he also looks out for the senior and junior deacons.
okay,
All right. The junior warden station,
which, by the way,
Is
is
a very-
occupied by our engineer, Mike on the mic,
yes.
That's me.
and he is our junior warden. So what is his responsibility as you
Well,
understand it?
most important thing, especially for belly masons, is to make sure that the collation is, in place when the masons get there and have their collation prior to the meeting.
And for those unfamiliar with that term, within our guidelines, collation is simply our dinner. Our dinner, our drinks, our dessert, our necessities, our kitchen necessities, basically feeding the craft for that evening, making sure that the food has been arranged for, delivered, picked up, what have you, set out and ready for serving. And I will say, unless somebody else disagrees with me, and I might have a problem with that, Michael has done an excellent job so far.
Thank you,
I would
Tom.
say so.
Yeah.
We had hot food. What was it, the last collation we had hot food?
Yeah,
the
last
he
couple.
does- Even though he showed up, and I'll tell you something, he showed up, brought the collation, and I believe you had to leave. Is that correct?
Yeah, I had something else that came
Yes,
up.
he had something
Yep.
there. So
But I wanted to make sure you guys were well fed.
there you go. And that is
doing great,
important. That's one of the nice things about Freemasonry.
Yeah.
Nobody forced him to do anything. Nobody forced him to go out. But it's, you want to serve the craft. You want to be with your brothers. You want to make sure the brothers are taken
Yeah.
care of.
Yep.
And I think that's a very, very important thing.
All right.
And it's just a wonderful thing to see the officers in their place doing what they're supposed to do.
Yep. Yep.
That's really a nice thing, especially in a well-organized lodge.
Yeah, here in the lodge, we call that calling the craft from labor to refreshment.
Yes.
And so refreshment it is. Okay, moving from the junior warden, what's the next position?
The junior warden, then it will be the senior deacon.
Senior deacon, who sits to my right. By the way, I'm the master of this lodge and will be until elections in, I believe it's April or May, correct?
That's correct.
And then we'll see what happens from that point forward. But so being that I sit at the head of the lodge in the east, the senior deacon sits to my right in the east, and what is his job?
Well, his job is, and we don't generally do this in a lot of lodges that I've attended, don't do that. But one of his responsibilities is to do the conducting. He's not the conductor, but he conducts the lodge during the 3 degrees. That's the responsibility of the senior deacon. He's also supposed to welcome and clothe visiting brethren, which in a lot of lodges, they leave that responsibility to, you come into a lodge and they don't really follow all the protocol that was set up that way. But that is one of his responsibilities. So he's supposed to do that.
And we have a 3rd degree coming up for one of our younger members.
Yes.
Younger meaning less time in the lodge. And the senior deacon will actually, in that position, will run most of the verbiage in the degree.
That's correct.
So he's got a big, important job for us to do.
He certainly does. He certainly does. That's really important.
Yep.
And our ritual is kind of what sets us apart from all these other similar type organizations. A lot of organizations branched off from Freemasonry. They became their own entities, and they took a lot of what we taught and what they learned in Freemasonry and took it upon themselves. But that's for another topic.
Sure. All right. Moving from senior now to junior deacon.
All right. The junior deacon has a very important position. And that's not to allow people, unannounced to just barge in on us. Because years ago, and even up to this day, we're not a secret society, but we are a society that has secrets. And you just don't want people to bust in, unannounced.
Yep.
So his job is to make sure that, number one, that there's a tiler outside, preventing the first part. And the second part is that he is to notify the worshipful master that whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And in some cases, you'll have a visitor, and you don't know who this visitor is, come to the lodge, which has happened on more than one occasion, and that person will turn around and say, oh, I'm a visitor from another lodge. Well, at that point, the worshipful master, after being informed that we do have a visitor, will appoint a committee to investigate this particular individual.
If we don't know him already.
Yeah, if you know him already, well, then the worshipful master, you just got to make sure that he's a member in good standing, which you do by a dues card. And then you also have to make sure that he's not clandestine, which we have no affinity with. Our Grand Lodge doesn't have any affinity with some of these Grand
No affiliation with those lodges at all.
And, but the purpose is not to show, if, for instance, if I was doing the interrogation to find out if he was it's not to embarrass the person. That's certainly not the case, which I know guys have done this, and I've seen it.
Yeah.
They wanted to show the individual how smart they were. That's not the purpose. When you get a visitor over there, and I apologize for digressing, but when you get a visitor over there, and the purpose is to make sure that he's a Mason that's entitled to be present at our lodge.
In good standing. Yep. And so, Brother Michael here, who is our senior warden, the junior deacon sits to your right, and you've done a fine job of guiding him learn his parts this year, and making sure we're all on track, as well as
Someone sits to your right.
and someone sits to my right, which is the senior deacon.
Your left, actually, my bad.
Oh, that side
Directly to your left,
is my secretary.
before him.
Well, and oh yeah, we forgot about our chaplain.
Oh, the chaplain, that's another chaplain's very important, because in Masonry, homage to the grand architect of the universe is a primary importance. And in fact, we have a saying that before embarking on any great or important undertaking, we should invoke the aid of deity. That's one of the, I don't know if you'd call it a tenet, but that's one of the signs of a Mason, to make sure you do that. And with that being said, the chaplain is in the east. He's not sitting somewhere in the lodge. His
Right.
position is in the east. That shows the importance
Yeah.
of that position.
You know, I'm thinking, and Brother Mark was actually, who is the chaplain for us
Yes.
here at Stony Point, which, by the way, we're in lovely Spark Hill, New York, which is where our lodge is located. I'm considering putting him on the right side of me, because it's hard to say he's my left-hand man. He should be my right-hand man.
Well, unfortunately, his position is to the left of the worshipful master as they're facing out.
Yeah, I know.
To the audience.
I know.
And just a little aside, as chaplain, even if a district deputy is there, he does not relinquish his seat.
Yes.
The worshipful master can relinquish
Yes.
his seat to the district deputy on official visits. The grand master comes in, but the chaplain never moved. He's the chaplain, that's his chair,
Yeah.
and he's not to move.
Well, and I very much have appreciated him. I think I gave him kudos when we were together the first meeting, the first podcast we did. He's my voice of reason. He is my, hey buddy, you screwed up and you forgot to say this, or this is the, he's got his shit together when it comes to our ritual. And I would also like to qualify a statement that you made before about we're not a secret society, but we are a society with secrets.
Yes.
The secrets being that we have our own etiquette, our own set of rules to follow, and our own way of doing things, so to speak. And so, honestly, if you're out there and you're listening and you want to find out what that means, you'll need to come and join us.
Yeah.
You join us for a dinner, it's on us, and see if you like the group of guys. I think we've all gone through that at one point or another. And, even myself, when I spoke with you about this well over 10 years ago, I was looking for a group to join, but I didn't know what I was joining. So I came down and sat with you guys, and it seemed like a pretty harmless group of fellas. Nobody needed to, introduce me to the goat. We didn't have any virgin skulls or blood baths or anything like that, which, was a little disappointing at first, but I got
I'm sure
over
we
it.
joined the same organization.
A very nice group of guys.
When
know
you
what?
say you didn't need to be introduced to the goat, you mean that literally, because Murray is the goat of Freemasonry, meaning the greatest of all time.
Greatest
so
of
you
all
already
time.
knew the goat.
I got the goat.
You already knew the goat.
Well, and it was a 50-50 split because him and brother Bob Blanky, I'll tell you what, you couldn't find more knowledge packed into two different skulls than between those two. So anyway, I had a good start and I appreciated it. Wanted to say thank you since you're here today for that.
Thank you.
Yep, because otherwise I just would have walked around saying, it seems silly, or I don't know what that's about, or it was in National Treasure.
On the
and I don't want to
subjects of
find it.
those who walk around and seem silly, should we talk about our secretary?
Nope. We shall moving from our junior deacon, which again is to the right of our senior warden. What other positions do we have?
Well, you're missing the two masters of ceremonies, the two stewards,
Okay.
and you're missing the Tyler, and you're missing the secretary and treasurer.
All right. So the
Those round out the
secretary and
offices.
treasurer. They're pretty standard definitions of secretary and treasurer.
Yeah.
What about the masters of ceremony? What do they do?
The masters of ceremony, they're in charge of the individuals that are taking the various degrees. It's their responsibility to make sure that they're properly clothed.
Yeah.
It's their responsibility to make sure that they're in order. And when it comes time for the ritual, they are there with the candidates.
And by degree, we're referring to, I kind of liken it to, I'm going from elementary school to middle school to high school.
Right.
And we have 3 degrees.
We have 3 degrees.
So it's a moving up ceremony.
Yes.
Is that accurate?
Yes. The first one is the entered apprentice degree. The second degree is the fellowcraft. And the third degree is the sublime degree of Master Mason.
Master Mason, which is what we all are in here in this
Yes.
room today.
Yeah.
And we have we have a 3rd degree, like I said before, coming up for one of our
Coming up,
younger
yes.
members next month, and we're looking forward to it. We're all involved. And there's a lot of work involved with getting our secrets together, so to speak, our lectures, our rules and edicts and oath of office, if you will. And so, yeah, we've got a lot of work going into it, and we still have more to go.
Right.
Let's see, we have Masters of Ceremony, we have stewards. The stewards are also important to Brother Mike on the mic because, why?
Well, those are the positions, and I know when I first came in and after I got involved in the lodge and I started showing up a lot, and they sort of took me, a couple of the old-timers took me under their wings, one especially Bruce McElhone. The second one was Lou Franks, Bob Blanky. There was a few of the brothers that sort of looked out for you, and they took you under the wing, and I wound up becoming a steward and helping out. That's important because, for instance, at a regular collation, the junior warden has his stewards either get the food or supposed to. They're there to help the junior warden for the collations. And they set it up and they clean up. Very important.
Yep.
They should be cleaning up because they're the new amendment in the lodge. They're at the bottom of the line. And
Let's call it the beginning of the line.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like that better.
The entrance of the line.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Okay, so that's good. That's a pretty good description of everybody. I think. Did we miss
Well,
anyone?
what about
You
our
forgot
Tyler?
One of the most important guys
Okay.
is the Tyler.
Tyler.
Now, the Tyler, that's a very interesting position. The Tyler, after finding out from the junior deacon what degree the lodge is on, because that's important. If you got a member of the lodge, let's just say he's a entered apprentice. So when the master tells the junior deacon, inform the Tyler, well, the Tyler's informed that he is on the, say, second degree, but you got an entered apprentice out there. So now he has to tell the entered apprentice, no, I'm sorry, you cannot come into lodge right now.
Right.
But let's just say it's a Master Mason outside, we're on a third degree, Master Mason degree, and he notifies the junior deacon notifies the master says, have him enter. When he comes in, he already knows I'm on the Master Mason degree, he knows what to do.
Yeah. Okay, so it goes from the guest to the Tyler to the junior deacon to the master. So basically, that's our version of call forwarding. Okay.
That's a good analogy.
Okay.
Yes,
Fair
that's
enough.
An excellent analogy.
Fair enough.
So, but also, and the reason we have a Tyler is in decades, I'm talking about a long time ago, when Masons, a lot of them met outdoors, and they met in like a valley. Well, they had a Tyler that would be outside that wouldn't let anybody come nowhere near where they were having a meeting.
Right. Security.
Yeah, and there it is. That's a good word to use.
Yep, security.
He's the security for the lodge,
Security
the first
officer.
line of defense.
Yep.
Yes.
Exactly. Ceremonially, our Tyler is in possession of a sword.
That's correct.
It's not sharp,
The one we use,
but it is there.
it's there. Yes.
And so, yeah, and he'll announce to the group who's here and whether they need to be vouched for or not, and then we take it from there.
Yes.
Now, you've filled pretty much every position within this lodge or other lodge. I'm assuming other lodges as well. Have you ever belonged to a different one?
No. While I belong to numerous concordant bodies, this is the only lodge I ever wanted to belong to and be part of. Well, I shouldn't say that. Originally, I was talking to Bob Martin, and he was a member of Wyoming Lodge.
Which is where?
Down in the Bronx.
Okay.
And so he was a Mason. He said, "Oh yeah, and I'll start coming back." And so I said to Bob, "Yeah, I'd like to join." So we went down to. We knew there was a large building in Pearl River, but we knew, we didn't know when it was. Mm-hmm. So we go there one day and it's closed. I said, "Okay." And at that time, I don't believe you look up in the yellow pages. It was, you could find it.
Probably
I don't
not.
believe that they were even listed.
And by the way, we're talking before the internet.
Yes.
What about before fire? Was it before fire?
Yeah, before fire, it was, he used to run around with a big club and beat people over the head with it.
All right, so you and Fred Flintstone were out looking for a lodge.
So anyway, we wound up going up to Haverstraw, and we met somebody there, and that's, of course, this lodge wasn't located in Sparkle, it was located in Haverstraw.
Okay.
You know, and there were 3 places that, well, actually, there's 4 places that Stony Point Lodge, and again, I digress, they, 1, 2, 3 places they met in Haverstraw. Okay. One was on Main Street, one was on First and Main, I think, and then the last place was up at on Hudson Avenue.
And what, they just changed buildings for improvements, I guess? or-
No. What happened was they didn't own a building at
Okay.
the first 2 locations. They did not own a building, and when they finally started with the Stars, by the way, the Order of the Eastern Star, the ladies was a very integral part in those days, the early days, and up until later on, of the Masons.
Okay.
They did things together, a lot of things, because many of the wives, I would say, probably, if you were a brother in this lodge and you were active and you had a spouse, that spouse was probably asked to join and did join the Order of the Eastern Star.
Our sister group.
Sisters, yes.
Yes, okay, including your wife, God rest her soul.
Yes, my wife was, in fact, when she was the matron in 1988 of Stony Point Chapter 540, Order of the Eastern Stars, I was her patron. When she was matron, I was a patron.
Okay.
And I got to tell you, in those days, I had a lot more fun in the Stars than I did in the Masons.
That's probably one of
It's a
those what
little
happens
more
in the
serious.
stars stays in the stars stories, I guess?
I'm sorry.
I said that's going to be one of those what happens with the stars stays with the stars?
No.
Not like that?
We used, like, when we traveled and whatnot, and again, you with your wife and all,
Yeah.
and it was just a fun time. We
Okay.
had a lot of laughs.
Okay.
You know, so I would definitely encourage if somebody's, one of the brothers, their wives were involved, if you could get their wife involved in the Stars,
Right.
it would be very helpful.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
great. And then, so that was Haverstraw. I know we were also in Piermont, correct?
No.
No?
Way Yonder was in Piermont.
Oh, way yonder was in Piermont.
All right. We were 2 separate lodges until 2005, and it's a funny little story. I'll just convey a little story about Way Yonder. Way Yonder and Stony Point were separate.
2 different lodges.
They were 2 different lodges, right?
Okay.
And Way Yonder put in for a charter, just as we put in for a charter. They got their charter in ahead of ours. Unfortunately, their paperwork wasn't correct, and the charter, the information and the application was returned to Way Yonder Lodge.
What year are we talking about?
We're talking 1853.
Okay.
I believe it was 1853.
Okay.
So what happened then was we got the number 313. They put it in, they got theirs right after ours, but it was 315. And there was another lodge, and my memory, if it serves me right, it was the Hudson Lodge, 314.
Okay.
I don't think they're even in existence anymore, or they merged with somebody. But so that was the thing. They didn't get their paperwork right. We got the lower number, you know, and the lower number indicates when you got your charter from Grand Lodge, and the lower the number, the older the lodge.
Gotcha.
You know. So,
Gotcha. All right. And so now here we are today,
yes.
since '05?
As a merged lodge since '05.
Since
yes.
'05. And in this building, which we're sitting and broadcasting from,
Yes.
when did we move into this building?
Probably, we sold the lodge somewhere around 2002, but don't hold me that.
No.
I'm not 100%
Okay.
correct, but it was somewhere around 2002
Okay.
that we put in for the merger, and we were discussing, after we had our 150th, we had our 150th anniversary, and that was quite a time.
Yeah.
We had some ups and downs with that, but to keep it on a positive note, when we had our 150th, the two lodge celebrated as separate entities 150th.
Okay.
And at that time, I did some research, and I came up with one of the lodge that had either Way Yonder or Stony Point in it. That was that was part of the lodges that our Grand Lodge recognizes. Mm-hmm. Only one. There was a Stony Point Lodge in North Carolina. Oh. So I contacted them, and I told them we were having our 150th, and we were namesake, and would they be willing to come up? And 9 of the brothers from that lodge came up before our anniversary.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And we ran into some problems. Originally we were going to have the collation, the celebration.
Served by dancing girls?
Dancing, I don't think so. But we were going to have it up at the Haverstraw Elks. And we spoke to the manager. We had an agreement, a written agreement. And probably a month before, he calls us up and says, listen, there's a member of our Elks that sent out invitations to his wedding party, that he's having his daughter's wedding reception at the Elks. And I said, we send out invitations too. He said, well, listen, let me explain something to you. You have a contract. It's your place if you want, but I'm just letting you know. So we said, we'll get back to you. And we thought about it, said, listen, we don't want the Elks to go up there and start bad-mouthing us, which they probably would do, because this guy would say, I'm an Elk and I can't get it, etc.
And they screwed up, but we would have gotten the bad rap.
Oh, yeah. So I said, we'll look for another place. And as it turns out, we got at Blue Hill Golf Course in Pearl River, they had a very nice restaurant over there.
Yeah.
And that's where we had it.
I bartended there, I know.
Oh, they did?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Maybe you were bartending when we had our 150. You could have been.
Maybe I wasn't born yet. I don't know.
That's true.
That was 2013, wasn't it?
2013? No, couldn't have been 2013 because we were still separate at the time and we didn't merge.
So it was 2003.
We didn't merge.
Oh,
you said 2013? I'm sorry.
Initially, I said 2013, but then you said if they were two separate lodges, it would have been 2003.
It could have been.
Because 1853 to 2003 is 150 years.
150, that's it.
Okay, so I was born then. I was around, but I wasn't a Mason. I wasn't part of the lodge.
No, but you could have been a bartender in high school in 2003, right, Tom?
Oh, sure, in high school. Yeah.
You what grade were you in 2003, Michael?
I don't remember.
I was in like the second or third grade in 2003.
Yeah, I'm thinking you were probably still in utero by that point.
Nah, I was born in 97.
So thanks for the history. And I by the way, my family, just as an aside, has made a little history ourselves this week. My daughter has had her first baby.
Hooray!
So I am a very proud grandpapa. And thought I'd throw that in there, even though I wasn't around since 1853. But you look at your kid and you look at her child, and now I'm thinking, oh crap! Any older, they're going to have to cut my leg off and start counting the rings. All right, so keeping on with history, give us, Brother Michael, you're our senior warden currently, senior warden elect. Give us a little bit of your history with the lodge. And how did you
senior warden in full capacity, not an elect.
Yeah, well, you're elected is what I mean.
I guess I do elect. I'm elected as senior warden.
Yeah. In other words, how did you come to be here? Who did you meet? Who met you? That kind of thing?
I saw a Masonic funeral when I was 10,
Ah, okay.
and that kind of really sparked my interest into it, and where I started doing research and insight. And I met Fred Schaefer and had gotten a petition from him,
Okay.
and then lost my petition
Ah,
and figured that it wasn't cool to go back to the same person who had given me a petition initially.
you mean you physically lost the...
Yeah, I
Oh.
misplaced it somewhere, and I think I came to find it. I found it later on because I have one that is given to me in color. I think it was the initial one. I had met another brother a couple months later and asked him for a petition, and Tom Nervenya mailed
Okay.
me one.
Now, correct
And-
me if I'm wrong, by the way, but Fred is a close neighbor of yours,
Yeah, he lives around the corner.
just like Brother Murray is to me.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Fred lives near the church that was built by a member of this lodge with the last name Allison. Yeah. Yes.
Little history all over the county
Yeah,
for
it's
us.
super cool.
And
Yeah,
that was when, by the way?
I don't want to be quoted on a date. I don't have them in front of me.
You said before you started in 2018, so maybe at least...
When was the church built?
No, your
when did I get
petition.
the 2018.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. When I joined, we were still having our collation out in the outer area as opposed to in here.
Yeah.
And I became a steward after being raised, and just stuck with it and said yes to everything that I had the opportunity to say yes to, and somehow I'm sitting up in the West helping you run the lodge, and I'm happy to be there.
If I'd have known you were saying yes, I'd have asked you to wash my car.
You know,
Damn it, I missed out on that
I
one.
guess you did, but you got the new son-in-law to do it for you,
Yeah,
you know?
daughter-in-law coming up, right?
Yes.
Or I should say granddaughter and son-in-law coming up. So, all right, so you're going on your 5 years, correct?
If you're going from date of initiation, yes. If you're going from date of raising, no.
Raising to the third degree, right. What do we count? Do we count it as the day you joined the lodge or the day you became a Master Mason before?
Master Mason.
Okay. So you've got about 3 more years to go,
Well, I
I guess.
became a Master Mason in June of 2019.
19, okay.
So I'm going to be 4 years in June of this year, and
Okay.
then 5 will be next year.
Wonderful, congratulations.
Thank you.
And we actually
And I have
announced...
been through I was a steward, and then the junior deacon, senior deacon, junior warden, and now the senior warden.
Yep. And on Wednesday last, we actually were fortunate enough to announce a 55-year member here.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
And I forgot to ask you, but you've been here how long, Marie? Give or take.
Probably somewhere around 40.
40?
Yeah.
Okay, youngster?
I'm still young next to Kolb.
Yeah, Bob Cole, very interesting fellow.
Yeah.
A lot of history.
Murray, you were right worshipful.
Yes.
Could you maybe speak about that a little bit?
Oh, yeah, yeah. There's a couple of ways. The designation for everybody, all the brethren, is brother. That's the most important. But as you progress in the lodge or to Grand Lodge, you can get another designation. If you become master of the lodge, you become a worshipful.
Which is me, for example.
And our master is addressed as a worshipful master. There are other designations. For instance, you have assistant grand lecturer, and the designation for that is a very worshipful. The next one up is right worshipful. Now, the members on the line in Grand Lodge are very worshipful. If you become the Grand Master, you become the most worshipful.
How did you become a right worshipful?
Okay, what happened was there's 3 ways to get it: to become a staff officer, and depending on which jurisdiction you're in, you could be a Grand Master of Ceremonies, you could be a Grand Sword Bearer. We used to be here in this jurisdiction a Grand Sword Bearer, and then they changed it to, I don't know if it's Grand Director of Ceremonies. But at any rate, that's one of the designations that you can get if you're a staff officer. If you get elected or appointed as the district deputy Grand Master, which represents the Grand Master in that particular district, then you get a designation for Right Worshipful. So a staff officer is a Right Worshipful, district deputy is a Right Worshipful, and there's another way to become a Right Worshipful. When you become a Right Worshipful, they call that's the purple. You've now obtained the purple in the craft. And that other way is Grand Rep. And what you become is all those Grand Lodges around the world that are in affinity with the Grand Lodge of New York, they have a representative, just like if you had an ambassador to certain countries. Except in this case, you become the Grand Rep of whatever jurisdiction they appoint you to or near the Grand Lodge of the state of New York. So in my case, my name was submitted into Grand Lodge. The Grand Master, great Grand Master, Eddie Gilbert, most worshipful Ed Gilbert, terrific guy. Ed Gilbert agreed to it and signed it, and then I became the Grand Representative of the Grand Lodge of British Columbia, Yukon, near the Grand Lodge of the state of New York.
Did you have to wash his car?
Yeah, I tell you, I would have. Yeah.
I believe our Tyler was the Grand Rep for Africa.
Oh, okay.
Benin, Africa.
Someplace in Africa.
Something crazy like that.
Yes. Yeah, and it's interesting because there was a slip up and they mentioned Athelstane Lodge at our last meeting.
Oh, yeah.
And if he was talking to the imaginary Scott, Right Worshipful Scott, well, both of them were members. One still is.
Athelstane, by the way, that's again, for those listening in, that's another lodge within our county,
Right.
within our district, Orange, Rockland, and Sullivan counties. So, we have members that have affiliations with more than one lodge within our group, and that's also possible.
Also on the subject of Athelstan, there's a certain document from the reign of King Athelstan.
That's right.
That I was hoping you would elaborate on for us.
Well, basically, I have a copy of what they call the Regis manuscript. It's the oldest written record that mentions masonry. The oldest.
Freemasonry, not just building, building of castles, right?
It mentions masonry.
Okay.
Okay. In the reign of King Athelstan in England, he issued a decree, and in that decree, it was written in Middle English. So they have to have an interpretation. So you read it, you look at it, you say, I don't understand a word that was written there, and then they have the interpretation on the right-hand side of the page. So, but what he did was he called for, once a year, all those involved in masonry to meet. He wanted to gather everybody in one place once a year. And again, you could correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not really sure of the date of the Regis manuscript where they dated it back to, was it the 1300s?
Yeah, I can pull it up if you bear with me one moment. It was...
Athelstan was in rule from when until about when, do you know?
Well, the date of the Regis manuscript, because I have it right here, is 1390.
1390. Athelstan was the king, and he was very involved with masonry. I'm not sure if masonry transgressed to speculative masonry. That was operative masonry at the time. They got the...
Meaning bricks and mortar, right?
Bricks and mortar, yes. They were the builders. Mm-hmm. And most of the time, especially during the Renaissance, most of the time, the builders would be stuck for a long, long period of time. But as these buildings started to be finished, completed, these fellas had to move on to someplace else that was building. And they needed a way to, to be safe, come into a new community. You wanted a way to be safe. And they had certain signs and ways to be recognized. So if I was a Freemason, not a Freemason, if I was in a Masonic guild in one place and I went to another, I would just present myself at that guild, and by certain signs and other information, they would then accept me in because I was a member of this masonry. I was a member of masonry. And then I could be safe. You come into a strange place in those days, they'd rob you, all bad things can happen. But if you hook up with a bunch of people that are your brothers, well, that's a whole other ballgame.
And the only thing you have to worry about is your brother ripping off the
And now you got a
taxpayers.
job, and, they will put you to work, so.
Oh, okay.
Later on, when there wasn't so much building, according to some of the articles that I've read, a long time later, what they had was they decided to bring in artisans. They brought in people from various vocations were allowed to come in to the Masons to be with them. And a lot of the nobility, especially like in France or Germany and England, a lot of the nobility wound up joining the Freemasons. And they were taken care of by their brothers, and, it grew. And that's what I believe happened with the Freemasons. But just a little history. I've read that when King Philip and the Pope that was living in France at the time, they issued the warrants for the arrest of the Templars, because the Templars owed Philip. Philip owed the Templars an awful lot of money, and he wanted to get his hands on them. So he conspired with the Pope to have them all arrested. Well, I believe they got wind of it, and the ship with all the treasure disappeared.
And by the way, the Templars were also considered security for the nobility. Is that correct?
No.
What were the Templars?
The Templars, a couple of French knights went to the Holy Land, and they were given a place to bed down on the Temple Mount. And this is revered by both the Jews and the Arabs, people worshiping Islam. So what happened was these 9 guys supposedly discovered something. They dug down and they come across some items. Speculation, it might have been the Ark of the Covenant, the Holy Grail, treasure. We don't know. But we do know they have information that a few of the knights left there and went to visit the Pope. When they left the Pope, they went back there, and a few years later, the Pope did something very unusual. He allowed them to form this new group who only reported to the Pope. They were not under any obligation to any king or whatnot. And then, just as an aside, not to, continue it, but their purpose was to protect the pilgrims going to the Holy Land.
That's it.
The pilgrims were going there. They had money with them. They got robbed. They were robbed. They were robbed by both knights and people under Saladin. They were just, easy pickings. So they needed a system whereby they wouldn't have to carry cash with them. Well, the Templars come up with this system where you deposited, say, $5,000 in France. with the Templars. They gave you authorization to get 5,000 when you arrived in the city of Jerusalem. That way you didn't carry no money with you.
Oh, smart.
And your money was,
They invented the banking network.
This,
essentially.
exactly.
And on the subject of the Knights Templar, on October 13th, 1307, which was a Friday,
Yes.
scorns of French Templar were simultaneously arrested by agents of King Philip, later to be tortured in locations such as Tower of Chinon, and admitting to heresy and other sacrilegious offenses in the order. They were put to death. That's where the origin of bad luck on Friday the 13th comes from,
yes.
is the Templars being prosecuted by King Philip.
Yeah. And as an aside, what the Pope did, because the Pope was afraid of Philip, he was living there, he was afraid he was going to get killed. And the Pope didn't give all the lands of the Templars to King Philip, which he thought he was going to get. The Pope gave it to the order of the Hospitalers. So he took all the Knights Templar holdings and land and money and gave it to the Hospitalers.
Okay.
So just a little.
Probably goes much deeper than that, I'm sure.
Oh, it was all politics.
I'm sure there's also tons of history that was lost forever that we'll never know. And
Murray, I have to ask, because we're
Yes.
here on the podcast, on the story of Knights and all these different Knight organizations. I think the first Christmas party I had gone to with the Lodge, I sat with you and Bob Blanky and Bob Kolb, and it was at the 76 house. And you were telling a story about Frank Sinatra performing a benefit dinner to save the Westchester Dinner Theater, and he thought he was going to be inducted into an organization and then was not. Could you tell that story so that there's no issue, or, if we want to look back and hear it again, it's on the record for the generations, because it's really good.
Well, as the rumor goes, Frank Sinatra always wanted to be a Knight of Malta, which is a Christian designation for those who are extremely worthy. That's their criteria. You have to be an upright person. You have to attend Mass all the time. It's Christian. It's a Catholic, Roman Catholic organization. And he always wanted to be there. Well, it seems that in New York at the time, the wise guys who controlled the Westchester Dinner Theater at the time were in dire need of money. They wanted money out of this place. They extracted it. And somebody come up with the bright idea, if we can get Frank Sinatra, we'll sell it out. We get him to do 1 or 2 or 3 days, we'll make a fortune, So they contacted him, and when he found out, they said to him as an enticement, we're going to get you into the Knights of Malta. Of course, these guys ain't getting you into the Knights of Malta because at the time, I know of one other person, Bernadette Castro, her family owned the Castro Convertibles.
Yeah.
And if you're as old as I am, you remember the early television commercials where the little girl would show how easy it is, take this convertible and open it into a bed. Well, Bernadette was a very righteous and upright person. I don't even know if she's still alive, but she wound up, she was a Knight of Malta in the Roman Catholic Church. And he thought he was getting that. Well, he went there. They got pictures of him with all the wise guys taking pictures, and it was he made a lot of money for the Westchester Dinner, and the mob guys were happy, except Frank went back, and he never got it. So.
he never got his Malta.
He never, no. They wouldn't give it to him because of his background was so cloudy that they, this is not a religious type individual. He did a lot of nice things, Frank Sinatra, but he wasn't a religious type person. Sorry about that.
And I do remember the Castro convertible commercials, sadly. Or happily, I'm not sure which one.
Yeah, until you said pull out the bed, I did not know what type of convertibles you were referring to. I didn't think it was a car company. I thought it was maybe like an awning that went on the outside of the house, but it was like what do they call those, Murphy beds?
Recliners.
It's a couch that opened into a bed. It's a convertible. Well, you wouldn't know.
And it would have done well today because it doesn't use a nickel's worth of gas.
Oh, yeah.
You just drive it around and powered by beer. So regarding your manuscript you're referring to, what was that written for? What was it about exactly?
I think Murray covered that in his explanation.
I fell asleep for that
King
part. Yeah,
Athelstan
sorry.
Calling all the Masons
I forgot
together.
about that part already.
But Murray actually
kidding.
said something to me really interesting before we started, which was that there's a text out of, I think he said, Scotland from the 1500s that makes some mention of speculative masonry. Are you able to elaborate on that?
They in the 1500s, they know that a lot of the knights left England right like the 12th. The ship, their fleet disappeared. Now they believe it went to England and Scotland. And when they gave orders in England, when the Pope gave orders, they said to arrest all the Templars. They didn't do that right away. They were very well received in Scotland, England, and Wales. So what happened was that gave them, of course, it went months and months. That gave them time to assimilate into the countryside and into the various workplaces and stuff. And it became very difficult. How were they going to find these guys? In Scotland, they knew who they were. In England, they knew who they were. And that was the end of that, I
mean, they probably had a great reputation because a lot of the pilgrims traveled to the Holy Land came of nobility or notoriety from those areas.
Absolutely. So, and they were very powerful at the time. They were the biggest money lenders in the known world at the time. And they had, the treasury somehow disappeared from France, from their headquarters. Disappeared. Somebody said it wound up on Oak Island. And they found Templar artifacts at Oak Island, which is up in Nova Scotia, I believe. So
maybe we plan a little lodge trip to go looking for some treasure, eh?
I got time this afternoon.
I think we'll go head it up.
Yeah, why not?
We'll go pick up Stanley Bob on the way. That'll be for some fun
Stanley
conversations.
Bob. And he'll regale you of tales of many years ago. But at any rate, that was a wonderful thing. And it's funny because in our lodge, we had some really knowledgeable guys. Of course, I would just tell one story, and I have it as written, and I brought this up one time, and they corrected me. And I said, no, I was told by these guys, these old-timers, and it had to do with, in the first degree, who is the St. John? And it's the Holy St. John of Jerusalem. Well, it turns out it's two in the first degree.
Yeah,
Saint John.
Yeah.
And St. John's, plural on John's.
Right, it's plural. Yeah. And they had it as singular, and they believed it because I was told by somebody more knowledgeable, older guys, because that's what they believed. So sometimes you have to be a little careful on some of the stuff, and I believed it too. Then they showed me. They said, no, that's incorrect. So, and I have it written in the quizzes that shows some of the things in there they wrote.
So on the subject of history and matching it with degrees, I mean, you've been in this organization for at least 40 years, right? Yeah. But your Lewis Jewel, how far back does your Lewis Jewel go in terms of dates?
Well,
tell us what the Lewis Jewel is, Michael.
So yeah, the Lewis Jewel is when your father was a master mason before you joined.
Okay.
And you're able to display your family lineage. And a Lewis was a tool used by stonemasons to lift heavy blocks on a pulley system.
Okay.
So what would you say what's the farthest back date on your Lewis jewel? And this is going to lead into a question about degrees in history.
Yeah.
So,
Well, my grandfather, he was a 50-year member of Golden Rule Lodge, which merged with a couple of other lodges at the time in New York. And he was both an operative and speculative Mason.
what year would that have been?
Oh, my God, 50 years from, he's been dead about 25, 30, 50, 70 years ago.
Okay, but you have more than just your grandfather on your
Oh, yeah,
Lewis.
yeah. No, I have...
His sons.
I have my
Your
old
sons.
I have that. I have my father-in-law.
Okay.
I raised him up in Newberry Lodge.
So did you have a lot of conversations with your grandfather about the degrees?
He used to tell me stories about being, not the degrees, but he did prior to being, see, in those days, you weren't allowed to say, hey, I want you to become a Mason. You were not allowed to do that. You had to want to be a Mason.
And approach someone and ask about
Yeah,
it.
you had to ask. So if I was a father and you were my son and I said to you, like trying to give you hints, but I couldn't ask you, or supposedly I couldn't ask you. So he would tell me stories about him when he was a Mason. And I thought some of the stories were kind of unique. He owned a stonemason company that did part of the United Nations building. He did other works in the city, but at any rate, he was a little Italian guy, and the foreman on the job was excuse me one second. The foreman on the job was giving him a very, very hard time. I mean, it was costing him an awful lot of money. And one day, the Shriners were in town, and they were doing something, and my grandfather was down there. I'm assuming it was near Grand Lodge, or wherever the Shriners were meeting. They used to own they owned a beautiful building in Manhattan. And he spots this foreman who's, if you're in the Shriners, you're a Mason. He spots him. The next day, he goes into work and he says to him, you're giving me a tough time here. I'm losing tremendous amount of money over there. And why would you do that to a brother Mason? The guy said, what? He says, yeah, I seen you over there. I know you're a Mason. Well, he said, this guy grabbed the whole of all the workers and said to them, new deal, and don't even be looking for overtime. We got to make up the money we cost this man. And he stayed on their back. He said, I made a fortune from this guy. That's just one of the stories. Another time, he was traveling down to Florida by car, and he was stopping somewhere around Virginia or so, and he went to see if they had any rooms. And the guy looked at him. He spoke with his Italian accent. Nah, we don't have no rooms for you. And he looked up and he spotted the square and compass on the wall. And he let the guy know that he was a Mason. Suddenly, not only he had the best room in the hotel,
Golly.
and the guy wouldn't charge him in the morning. He tried to pay me. He said, no, you're... And that's some of the things that always stuck with me. Now, why would somebody in an organization don't know the fella get down there and be treated like this? And even in my own case, I've had a couple of wonderful, wonderful experiences where I did very well. I was going for a job interview when I was a private investigator one time. And I was down here, we were down in Manhattan. I had a Washington attorney had recommended me to a producer of the movies. And this guy needed some some private eyes to work for him.
Was it John Holmes?
Huh?
John Holmes?
No.
Okay. I didn't know what kind of movies you were into. I was just wondering.
Yeah. No, that's for you, the porno stuff. But
Oh no, Tom likes to look at the secretaries of states in swimsuits. Rachel Levine in a bathing suit.
Yeah.
That's what Tom likes to look at.
Moving right along.
But anyway, so to finish that up, during the interview, my friend, who was the attorney from Washington, he used to be the Undersecretary of the Treasury, says to him, I want to tell you a little something about Murray. And he looked over and said, the table, he announces, I know everything I want to know about Murray. And I looked like that, and I go like, what the hell are you talking about? And then he looked over and he said, I saw your ring. He whispers over to me. And he says, I'm 1-2.
All right, well, let me ask you something.
Yeah.
You were an active police officer, right?
Yes.
Did you ever let anybody off who was a brother? And that might be a not
I don't think I
appropriate-
should say that. But let me just tell you this.
Yeah.
I have helped
Clap,
people out.
clap. That means we're
I
cutting
have
that.
helped people out, and if I found out you were a Mason, I was once stopped, and of course you could never find this out. I was stopped on the Palisades Parkway, and I had the stickers on the back of my car. And trooper come up, and he said to me, I said, I wasn't speeding. I didn't know why he stopped me. Real for real. Then he told me, he mentioned something, and then finally he let me know, that if I ever need any help or anything, he worked over there, and please give him a call. And it was a brother.
Oh, nice.
So you've been pulled over by other police officers just to
I've been-
shoot the breeze a little bit with you? They were bored and wanted to say hello?
On the Palisades, maybe.
Maybe
Yeah.
it's possible.
Palisades.
Well, okay, do you feel like also being a police officer and a brother adds a second layer of that camaraderie, or do you think that there would be benefit to, because we all know, do you think that police officers as a whole across the country would benefit from something like Freemasonry?
Oh, absolutely. No, without a doubt. And you shouldn't go into Freemasonry looking to what can I get out of it and all this. And we have people that come in actually
Yeah,
say,
seeking business opportunities.
yeah, this will be, I'm going to sell this guy's insurance and all this crap. That's not what Freemasonry is
Absolutely
about.
not.
Freemasonry is about taking a good man, and making him better. And who would be against becoming a better person, So I was a member also of the New York City Police Department Square Club, which is a club made up of Masons. And I was also part of their degree team. We used to go around and perform the third-degree drama. And I did that for many years.
I learned something new today.
Yeah. Oh, you didn't know that?
After all those years living next to you, I never heard about that before.
Yeah. So there you go.
Okay.
Are any of those guys still around?
What?
Are any of those guys still around?
The Police Department Square Club's still going strong.
Like the people that you were doing that degree team with.
Most of them, to be honest, are longer. They either are passed away, and or they retired and left the area many years ago. So, because you got to remember, when I was there, I was in the police department from 65 to 85. So within that span I don't remember exactly how long I was with the Square Club, but it would have been within that time frame. And a lot of them, the ones that I knew, they're not there. Now, I still get emails from the current officers and members of that, and I get their monthly newsletter and their emails. So I see the names. I do know quite a few of the guys, but, not the guys that when I was there, to answer your question.
Well, you know what I think?
What?
That sounds like a fantastic group to have known and been a part of.
Yeah.
What is our why don't you give for the audience, Michael, give the Stony Point Facebook page. What are we on? Just as Stony Point or SPW 313, right? Plus we have spw313.org, which is our website, and Stony Point Way Yonder Lodge number 313 is on Facebook. Who knows? Maybe somebody from your Policeman's Square Club or Square Group would maybe even be listening to this podcast in the future and want to look us up, and they can always relate a message through that. We will answer any messages or comments that we get. And do we have anything else set up in terms of communications from our audience?
You can reach out to us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube comments.
And YouTube, yep. And so the Freemasons Happy Hour, this will end up on YouTube. So you can sit and watch that. And you know what? We always encourage everyone to find us, watch us, like us, and share us as well. And then we've really enjoyed this today, by the way.
And I have also.
I'm glad you had some free time for us.
Yes.
Any more history you dig up in the future and you want to come back, you're always welcome.
There's a lot of stuff that, the people, I looked their names on the board and stuff, and people that went here, just fantastic guys. And,
Yep.
Murray, before we wrap things up here, I do want to just ask you, there is this old discussion about how Freemasonry makes good men better. If you could give us just a little summary of that, of what you think Freemasonry does to make good men better, I think people might appreciate that.
Well, number one, they take you in. You have to be a good person, or you should be a good person when they do the investigation. That's why they need, on your petition, you got to have people that'll say, yes, we know him. Because if you can't get anybody to say, yes, we know you, we don't want you. There's probably something wrong there. So when you get in there and you learn and you meet the brothers, you learn that the whole world's not about some particular guy. It's not about you, And I think Freemasonry, for me, teaches you to want to help other Masons. You want to do good for them. Because by doing good for them, it makes me feel good. And those are the things that I think that, just to encapsulize, when you come into a lodge, you get to meet a lot of brothers. You get to meet other people, and there's no politics. They don't want you to have politics. I've met some really great brothers that their political philosophy is completely against what I believe in. But I don't have no problem because they believe in a higher power. I do too. So I don't have no problem.
Which is a requirement, by the way.
Well, it is a requirement, yes.
You don't have to be a Christian or a Jew or a Muslim or whatever, but you do need belief in a higher power, supreme being.
We don't tell you what higher power that is, or
No,
even how many for that matter.
Right.
The reason behind that is, how could they trust your word? How could they trust you if you don't believe in a higher power? And when you say, I'm going to take an oath on whatever book that you would desire, if I don't believe in anything, we don't want an atheist in here. We really don't. We don't want agnostics in here. We don't.
What do you, I'm sure both of you sitting here has heard the expression, you're judged by the company you keep. And you're also a combination of the 5 people you spend the most times with. So when I've thought about this, I've always, and please correct me if you don't think I'm correct on this, when you hang out and spend time with well-rounded, successful people, you're more likely to pick up their habits and traits and emulate them. But if you hang out with bums, you're more likely to be a bum. So I think that's one of the really fundamental ways that Freemasonry works to develop its members, is by exposing them to people who are
good standing in their community.
Yes. Would you subscribe to that thought?
Well, when you come into Masonry, there's an expression, I want to see the light. You want to get light in Masonry. And as you progress in Masonry, you're going to look around and you're going to realize, what does that light mean? It means I'm going to aspire to try and be a better person. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes, for whatever reason, you might not be able to do so. Could be physical, could be mental. But that's what you're supposed to come in. We're going to give you the tools, and we want you to see the light. We want you to get more light. And with that in mind, you say to yourself, getting that light puts you on a high. Each time you get a little more light, you go into a higher plane. And when you get on that higher plane, hopefully you're that higher and better a person.
And I think of it as being enlightened,
Yes.
educated, made aware, things like that. The light.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter. I've had guys in the craft, very educated guys that are doctor. They have their doctorates. And some of them are medical doctors we have in here. But I also learned that even in our own lodge, at one time, we had 7 brothers in this lodge, and I call them brothers because that's what they were, who took their 3rd degree on the Quran, okay? They were Muslims. 7 brothers, and the country they came from was Turkey. And
I've always preferred ham.
Huh? What did you say?
I've always preferred ham.
So anyway, but we, never had a problem here. Never had a problem with someone's religion, And it's like Rudyard Kipling, when Rudyard Kipling wrote many years ago, that great British writer, he was a Freemason, and when he went there, he was in a lodge that a lot of Muslims, Hindus, Christians. I think there was even a Jew in there too. I'm not sure. I don't quite remember. They never had a problem. They had no problem. They could sit and break bread. In fact, Harry Truman passed the remark. He was in his lodge. His gardener was the master of the lodge. And when he said, when I walk into that lodge room, I'm beholden to the master over there. He's the boss, not me. And he was the president of the United States. I mean,
Harry Truman also led a huge effort to try to locate the missing cornerstone of the White House, which has been lost in time, but might have some type of relic hidden in the cornerstone.
Right.
Really?
Yes.
And there's so much history with Washington, D.C., and if you ever get a chance and you've never visited, go down and see the monument in Old Town Alexandria, the Masonic monument there.
Yeah, you laid the cornerstone for that one, right?
No, it was Stanley Bob.
That's right, it was Stanley Bob.
Yeah. We've got history all around us.
Oh, my God.
I think I pointed out before, and I'll just make this quick, but we are around the corner from a restaurant we mentioned earlier called the 76 House.
Yes.
The last incarceration point of Major Andre before he was hanged as a traitor for having plans for the invasion of West Point.
Do we know if Andre was jailed before that?
Well, he was held. That was his incarceration.
Yeah, no, but you said it was his last incarceration.
Prior to being hanged. So before that, I don't know what the story was. I just know that was
That'd be something maybe to do some research if Andre
Yeah.
had been held somewhere before the 76.
Right. Depends on where he got caught, and I don't have the full backstory on that history. But again, it's right around the corner from where we are here in Spark Hill. And, I think every town's got some kind of a Washington something or another. I know in our town we have the King's Highway, which was a battle route, if I'm not mistaken. And then in Tappan, where the 76 House is, we have the Old Man's Church, 76 House. We have the DeWint House, which was a winter headquarters and friends of George Washington.
It's where the revolution also ended.
And where it ended. There you go.
And we have Andre Hill, which is where John Andre was executed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We have the Stony Point battlefield.
Yeah.
We have history up and down in this county, and
Well, just let me make one little point. The reason that Major Andre was hung
hanged.
was an American spy was captured by the British
Yeah.
prior to us capturing Andre. And Washington had asked and requested them not to kill him, the British.
He liked him, if I'm not mistaken.
He must have liked him.
Yeah.
But anyway, the British hung him. So Washington was fuming that they hung him. And at the Tapan, it used to be the Tapan Dutch Reformed Church, the oldest church in Rockland County, they had the trial.
The trial was at the
The
church?
pastor of that church, Reverend Hoover, is a member of our lodge, Don Hoover. Anyway, that was the only time during the Revolutionary War that every single general in the Revolutionary Army was at one place at one time, and that one place was Tapan, which is the Reformed Church. Okay, they were all there at one time.
Wow.
And again, the backstory was they hung an American spy. Washington was fuming, said, right, they have that. Well, if this guy's found guilty, which of course he was going to be found guilty because they got him with the evidence. And another aside, supposedly when Major Andre was stopped, the three guys were going to rob him.
Oh, jeez.
They were, yeah.
Almost like three Rafarians, huh?
Yeah. And then when they went into his boots and they found the plans there, then they realized, oh, this is a little bit above our pay grade. We better report this.
Another fun little thing about the capture.
But that's what the real deal was. He was supposedly that these three guys were going to rob Andre, and then when they realized they had a spy, they said, we better bring him in.
Had Andre been in his general's clothing and not under a fake alias, he would not have been hanged. But since he listened to Benedict Arnold and put a fake name on and then put on civilian clothes, he was then a spy.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. Well, that's the definition. If you're a combatant and you're in uniform, they're supposed to take you as a prisoner of war. If you're in civilian clothes, they consider you a spy, and you can be executed.
Wow.
And that's why they execute those.
Well, obviously he was about to be robbed by non-Masonic members.
Absolutely, I
Yeah.
would say.
And and with that, I'm going to wrap this up and say thank you both very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for having me.
There's nothing I like better than learning a little bit something new every day. Yep.
There's a lot of history, especially in this lodge.
Yep.
A lot of history.
Happy to get
learned
learned up with you, Tom.
Oh, I'm happy to be learned up with you too, man. I say cheers to you both. Thank you so much.
And
Yeehaw.
cheers to you.
And be well, Stony Point, way on to lodge number 313, the Freemasons Happy Hour on YouTube, the Freemasons Happy Hour on Facebook, at the Freemasons Happy Hour on Instagram, spw313.org, and good night, everybody.